Hi everyone, welcome to Market Intel, the show that brings you what's happening in the front line with businesses in New Zealand. Today I'm joined by TP Katene.
Yeah.
So TP. So how would you explain your role? You're sort of you look after Maori Investment as a whole, essentially for New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. Am I sort of on the right thinking there?
Yeah. So I'm an investment manager at NZ Trade and Enterprise, and what we tend to do is we work with Māori entities around the country to develop big investable deals from a greenfields perspective, trying to create new jobs in the local regions, bring in new expenditure into the local economy. We also work with Māori founded companies who are looking to grow internationally and help guide them through their capital raising journey. And the third prong of what we do is working with tribal or Māori entities who are looking to act and investor role and connecting them, as we do with non-Māori investors, to some of the deals that we are considering and supporting.
The Maori business economy as a whole is estimated to be, what is it, around $50 billion, I've been told it's been estimated at?
Yeah, I think it was back in about 2017, it was a Chapman report, and they talked about the $50 billion Māori economy, and it really is growing very quickly. Now, last 2 months notwithstanding, but about 15 billion of that is held within iwi entities as well as trusts and corporations. And so the vast majority of it is actually in the SME space.
And sort of out of that, like how widespread does that sort of statistic you think go? Is it sort of measured by Maori business owners, or is it sort of services that follow the sort of Maori sort of ethics and such?
Yeah, it is a really tricky one, and one that we always run into when we're talking about what is a Maori entity. I think it's really going to be a conversation about how long is a piece of string, because people have different definitions. But it does give us a kind of a baseline to consider it. So for us, the Māori entities are ones that stem from our treaty relationship with tangata whenua, and that's either through tribal organisations such as Runanga, further to Māori trusts and corporations, which are under different legislation, but also down through that, which ones that have significant interests in the Māori ecosystem, whether they are with significant Māori shareholdings or have significant influence in some of the supply chains and value chains that Māori are operating.
And with obviously COVID-19, I mean, we all have to talk about COVID-19 at the moment, and we're going into level 2 tomorrow, which is pretty exciting. So, I mean, this will get released after this, but that's fine. So welcome to level 2. And how big an impact do you see that on? I mean, again, how long's a piece of string? But do you see it being a significant impact on the Maori business economy as a whole, or is there enough rainy day funds there to sort of see through this? It
is a very broad thing to consider, and part of what I talk about is when we look at Māori economic development and Māori portfolio management. Often there's three things that generally drive the areas that they play in. One is the grandfathered sector assets that come back in the form of treaty settlements. For instance, some of my whānau in Wakatū Corporation, we received apple orchards, and so we are now orchardists. So that's one way that we enter these industries, similar to the fisheries settlement going to iwi around the country, so that we all have interests in how fisheries are sustainably managed and controlled into the future. The other thing that tends to be a strong selection bias is jobs and sectors that create jobs. So you'll see we have lots of interest in the primary industries and also in tourism, because they do create lots of jobs on the ground, and that's what we're really trying to do. I often speak about a whakatauki, or a quote that I think really summarizes it nicely in terms of the Māori approach to creating intergenerational wealth, and that is, money is essentially like a kumara. Its only inherent value is its ability to sustain its people. And so if you look at it that way, the ability to create wealth and the ability to mobilise wealth is the main lever that we have to create a holistic sense of prosperity for our people.
It's quite interesting that we've talked about this a little bit, but the whole approach to Maori business, or the culture as a whole, is around, like we talked about, sustainability, benefiting your social community as a whole, and sort of business being another force for good, essentially, and it's kind of like the trend that we've seen in the, capitalist corporate world that we've seen in the last few years. There's been a big focus shifting towards how are companies being more environmentally friendly and more sustainable, and how are they doing social good impact into the community. So it's quite interesting. Do you think there's obviously, I feel, quite a lot that we're trying to do over here and try and figure it out, and instead of that, maybe we should be looking more inward to what you guys have been doing for pretty much, like you said, 1,000 years. So you might have a few tips,
Well, it is something that I've considered at length. In fact, it was part of the research question that took me over to the United States on a Fulbright scholarship. I went and tried to consider how to create these bespoke business models that maximize the creation of holistic wealth in ways that we determine and define. Because for Māori, it's all about self-determination for tino rangatiratanga. And our ability to first create this significant asset base and then mobilize it to create the future that we aspire to for our descendants, that is the true meaning of business for us. And we have been really fortunate to see that the general timbre of the emerging business focus on social enterprise and the power of for-profit business to create social impact as really marrying up and lining up with those traditional values that we hold. And so while it's not a new approach for us to consider, what it does bring is new frameworks and levels of detail through which we can consider how to do that effectively and mobilize and allocate those resources in the most efficient manner to create that social impact.
We've seen in the news some obvious impacts on COVID with some of the, every business as a whole, and tourism's been hit hard. We know Tahu has quite a significant, short over jet and all that kind of stuff. How are you seeing, obviously we can't go into anything confidential or stuff, but have you had any sort of those discussions with those types of businesses and what the sort of plan is really? Because no one's really come to the forefront to say, right, tourism, this is what you've got to do to survive, no one's really had an answer for them. I'm just curious to know your thoughts and the conversations you're having, given that there's such a strong Maori interest in the tourism industry.
From a general sense, and of course there's going to be differing views and positions within this, but Maori organisations and entities tend to be low in debt. They tend to have some decent cash reserves sitting in the bank, and they're looking at a point where saying, well, we've navigated these rough waters in the early stages of this lockdown, and we're getting to a point to stop and look and think about how we can voyage and take advantage of the position that we have in front of us. And so with tourism, it is about thinking about what the new post-COVID tourism industry looks like. But also from a portfolio perspective, it's seeing, well, how do we look at what our current exposures are and see how the assets we have under management might be best put to use to give us some resilience with the new economic headwinds that are currently in play. And so I think there's going to be, mirrored by the general tourism sector, there's going to be a shift towards understanding what a more significant domestic tourism play is going to look like, building on our natural inclination to be storytellers and connectors of people and places, but also how to make sure that we can partner and not operate in our own silos to make sure that we are able to offer our domestic tourists wide-ranging and varied experience that opens up the country to our own people.
I think you're right. Maybe it's a good opportunity for New Zealanders to really sort of look around and go, actually, this place isn't too bad. We've got some pretty nice spots here to go for a quick weekend away somewhere.
That's right. And I think certainly it is giving us an opportunity to really look critically at how we do operate and the things that we value. Particularly in the Māori economy space, there has been a strong push from some of our community leaders about what the post-COVID New Zealand economy looks like, and how can we instill these traditional values of kaitiakitanga or sustainability and guardianship into the heart of what that economy might look like. And we've seen efforts certainly from the government with the four capitals approach that they're trying to instill in the wellbeing budget and the living standards framework. But as we mentioned earlier, these are like concepts and values that we've held for 30 generations in this country. And if we can reshape our economy to reflect that people centricity that I think is inherent to all New Zealanders, but make it into a more explicit expression of how we do business, I think that in the long run we can only benefit from doing that.
No, I think it's going to be very interesting times going ahead, and like there will be businesses that will suffer. Not all of them are going to make it, but we're probably going to see a new generation coming through, essentially starting up. And interesting, like in my role, like over the last couple of weeks, the workload is really pumped up, and a lot of it is people buying existing businesses, merging with other businesses. And then even today I was talking to someone that's doing some cool stuff with in the agricultural space using modern technology so that you take the human person out of it from a risk perspective, so not exposing them to dangerous chemicals and such, and again, it's yes, it creates efficiencies, but it was more about protecting the people, as opposed to these dangerous weed killers and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think we're going to be on the peak of a sort of a new industrial revolution we were talking about quite some time ago in regards to the sort of digital revolution, but I wonder if it's going to be moving towards, as we've seen this grow of social enterprise was the hot word over the last 2 years. A lot of them haven't done well because they haven't been commercial, but they've done some great things. So I think there's a lot they can take from what you're talking about, which what a lot of your iwi and that have been doing in regards to the last 1,000 years. Essentially, it's the original and probably best social enterprise we've got to study from, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positives that we can bring forward from our ancestral knowledge systems, but there's also a lot of really innovative and intuitive approaches that the modern social enterprise paradigm are taking. And certainly through some of my other role as a trustee for Ākina Foundation, that is a very clear link of how integral the role of Māori enterprise is going to be in establishing and transforming the New Zealand economy into having that social impact focus.
And just to finish off, what's your piece of advice for anyone in this situation at the moment where they've really got to fundamentally look at this business and go, right, how do I change this structure going forward? Yeah,
and I think I'm a great believer in our ancestral wisdoms, and one of the sayings that I really hold true to, particularly at a time like this, is "Wero hia te rua kia puta mai ai te tuna." That translates to reach into the pit so that the eel may emerge. And in a modern context, that is reach into and lean into that uncertainty, because therein lies opportunity. And that's what this offers for Māori and non-Māori organisations and businesses and companies alike. There is an opportunity in these natural disasters and issues that we have, but you have to make sure that your house is tidy first, and going through and taking this opportunity to look at the hygiene of your organisation. We sit down and work with companies and go through line by line through their expense sheets and saying, if it's not saving you money or if it's not making you money, what can you do about it? Can you extend terms? Can you get rid of it? Can you do things more efficiently? And really understanding what a lean and efficient form of your company is to really drive your purpose as an organisation is a really key part to position you to take advantage of those opportunities.
Be lean and clean.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, nice one. Oh, thank you very much, TP. I very much appreciate it, and hope you enjoy getting back into the office hopefully soon, and having a nice cup of coffee and just getting on with it, eh?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to some flat whites and some solitude after the kids go back to school, that's for sure.
Yeah, me too. Awesome. Cheers, mate. Talk to you soon.